أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين سيما الحجة بقية الله الأعظم روحي وأرواحنا له فداء ولعن دائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So for 2 nights we'll be talking about the concept of fear. We explained a bit about how to deal with that fear. We explained a bit about the negative effects of submitting to your own fear and how fear can affect your lives as believers. We have to understand that when we are talking about cultures, unfortunately, you see some cultures, they even promote that fear. And it's quite common, especially in the modern state or modern state society where everything is under surveillance. There are certain types of ways and methods they use to create that fear or fear mongering amongst people. And it's quite common. It's a famous strategy that a lot of people they use in their communities and a lot of rulers they have used over time. But in the culture of Islam or in the culture of the wilayah of the 12th Imam, inshallah ta'ala, when he arrives and he establishes a government, then it's not going to be based on fear and such. In other words, the culture of Islam promotes the idea of the mu'mineen being brave. In other words, when you decide certain things in life, or you have to make a choice in life, whether it's your education, whether it's choosing a spouse, whether it's, cleaning your house, it could be so many different things in life. But it shouldn't be driven by fear. It shouldn't be driven by fear. And that's a very important point to make. Why? Because what is the contradiction to a lifestyle which is driven by fear? That it's a lifestyle which is driven by passion and love. In other words, you have ambitions to reach that higher goal in life. You're not only driven by fear anymore. So when a person does that, it has some positive effect to his life as well. One of the first positive effects it has, you become a brave person basically. You become creative. And you are able to compete with other mu'mineen to become the best. Not only do what we call rafa taklif. It's only about, I just need to take care of this. This is my wajibat, not more than that. Because we explained Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, what is it that He mentioned as the wisdom behind creating everything? الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. We created death, wal-hayat, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, to examine you. For what? أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Which amongst you are the best or do the best deeds? What does it mean to do the best deeds? He could say Amal al-Hasan, for example. He didn't do that. Ahsan in Arabic means the best. In other words, it's a competition. Imagine the national team if they were driven by fear and not passion and love for the sport. But what is it? What is it exactly that makes a national team, for example, in a certain country, when they compete, that they are driven by love and passion? The first thing is that basically they understand that all their needs are taken care of. They just have to strive. They understand that. They take care of their salary, they take care of their food, they take care of everything. If there's damage, they know where to go. Yeah, they go to the hospital, they got doctors who take care of them, and so on and so forth. Because they understood that and they are certain about it, they have no doubt in that they're going to be taken care of, they can play with passion and love. So how come that this person on the national team, he relies or he has more tawakkul in the system, in his doctor, in his trainer, in the people that provides for him, more than we as believers have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So it's actually possible. All these individuals that you see around in our society, they're practical examples that it's actually possible for for you to be driven by passion and love and not fear. So if we want to compete to be the best, dear brothers and sisters, it's conditioned by what? That we're driven by something else than fear. And not only fear. So now a question arises. What is that? The question is, how does that relate to our social responsibility? How does it affect our communities and the society in general? Because that's important to understand as well. We talked about how it affects our individual lives, right? If you're not God-fearing, you're going to be what? A scary person, scared person. You're not going to have the same creativity. You're not going to have this. You're not going to be you're driven by fear in general. So it's going to have some negative consequences in your life, and you're going to be submitted to oppressors. You're going to do this and that. But how does it affect a community in general? Look, if we look at in history of humankind, you see that oppressors, they always used fear as a concept to rule over people. It was quite common throughout history. But there's a difference between how they used to rule and how they rule today. What is that difference? So when we look at how they used to rule, what was it? With the sword. They used to scare people off. We're going to make sure we're going to take everything from you. Poverty, life, death. They threatened them. It was certain things that had to do with what? Physical harm. They used to physically harm other individuals. Therefore, people would be scared. They wouldn't dare to rebel against them. They wouldn't dare to criticize them and so on and so forth. So everybody was just calm. Everybody would just accept them ruling or them being the rulers, even though they were oppressive. But today, brothers and sisters, you see that rulers, they use another concept, another method. And when I say rulers use that method, I mean specifically in certain countries, in a certain part of the world, mostly in Europe and the western part of this world. So in Scandinavia, it's quite common. Scandinavia is one of the countries some of the countries that they use this method more than anywhere else. Anywhere else. Northern part of Europe, they use this method more than anywhere else. So what is it with this method that makes it so effective, first and foremost? So this method, you know what they do? They use this method with two aims. The first aim, dear brothers and sisters, is the aim of people being scared of being firm in their principles and their values and their identity as Muslims. So when they use that method, people are going to be scared. They're going to try to apologize for them being Muslims. So what is that method? We're going to talk about that. The second effect of that method, you know what it is? Muslims are scared to become united. Why? Because if you're not firm in your principles and beliefs and values, it's going to be difficult for you to unite with other individuals based on that value, based on those beliefs. Why? Because there's no strong foundation. You don't have it as an individual. So you don't feel a need for you to find other individuals in your community to unite with those individuals, to be firm in your principles and your ideas and values. That method, dear brothers and sisters, is a method that created or was one of the main factors behind atheism is thriving in Scandinavia more than anywhere else in the world. That method was also used to scare people off, not only to be Muslims or be firm in the principles, but just to have something to do with religion in general. And they use this method so often that people are so scared of it, and it creates some sort of a mental fear, which sometimes can be even more destructive than an invasion. More destructive than what? An invasion. Why? Because when you see there's certain types of taslim, as we call it in Arabic, where you submit to the enemy. So sometimes you submit logically, yeah? You submit logically. The person you accept the ideas that he put forward and you accept that. Sometimes no, it's only in physical terms that you submit to another person. In what sense? The person, he invaded your country, you know that he has a stronger army than yours, but you're not submitted to him mentally. You don't accept his ideas and you're not scared to rebel against him. You're just not strong enough to do it. So when countries are invaded, people are still mentally, They're still ready to fight for their cause. It's not like they're going to give out or compromise on their principles and values. No, they're still going to be firm. In fact, sometimes that could even be a cause to why they unite and fight against the oppressors or the invaders. But this method is so sneaky. This method is it's the worst type of psychological warfare. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this method so many times in the Holy Quran. But unfortunately, we don't focus too much on it. Why? Because sometimes when they have to justify it, they use a concept which is called freedom of expression. That method, dear brothers and sisters, that's a method that we call istihza in Arabic. That means that they mock and they ridicule your ideas, your beliefs, and your values to such an extent that sometimes you see believers are scared to be firm in the principles. They're scared to unite based on those principles. And if anyone does that, they'll be labeled as fundamentalists. They'll be labeled as extremists, and people that are terrorists, supporters of terrorism, and so on and so forth. Why is this mental type of fear worse than any other fear? You know what it is? Because gradually it's going to strip you off of any value that you hold, all your beliefs as well. The best example that we can learn from, dear brothers and sisters, that's Christianity in Scandinavia. They ridiculed Prophet Isa alayhi salam so much, to such an extent that you don't find any followers of Prophet Isa alayhi salam in Scandinavia anymore. They wear the cross. Maybe you can find a village or two outside of big cities, but they don't. It's not like it's important for them. Prophet Isa, as we say in Farsi, kiru chande, like nobody cares. Nobody cares. And that all started when they started to ridicule and mock certain ideas within that faith, like core values of that faith. And you know what? The funny part, you know what it is? I looked through the different narrations on how they're going to wage war against the mu'mineen in the end of times, in the times before the arrival of the 12th Imam. And subhanAllah, this method was mentioned the most. Not invasions, nothing else. This type of method was explained or mentioned the most in the different narrations that we have from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They're going to ridicule and mock mu'mineen, their beliefs and values, to such an extent that they're going to be scared and sometimes apologizing for them being Muslims. So how do Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reply to that in the Holy Quran? We have a verse from the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about the time before the arrival of the 12th Imam. He talks about a certain group of people that are going to emerge, and He brings out and He explains the different characteristics that these people they have. What is that verse? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains. He said, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, man yartadda minkum an dini. The ones who turns his back towards his religion, O you who believe. فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِي اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to replace you with a people. They love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He loves them. Then He explains the characteristics that this type of people, this qawm that they have. أَذِلَّةٍ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That's the first thing. They're humble when it comes to other believers. They're humble towards other believers. عِزَّةٍ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. They're firm, steadfast when it comes to the disbelievers. They don't compromise. And then He explains something. Look, out of all the characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He can mention, out of all the characteristics, they're generous, they give out from their wealth, they do this, they do that. None of them. وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ اللَّائِمِ. And they don't fear the mocking and to be ridiculed by the people that want to accuse them of something. In other words, they don't fear the accusations of the accuser. Now, when people come forward, or when you see the media, the politicians, they raise their fingers towards the mu'mineen, they don't care. It doesn't even affect them. This method, dear brothers and sisters, is the most destructive method. I looked this method up. I just wanted to see if any psychologists, they made some studies about it. That the closest thing that you can find within psychology that is quite similar to that is what we call character assassination. Character assassination. One of the so-called benefits of character assassinations or effects of character assassination is basically that the person, you dehumanize a person. So let's say, for example, they marked a person to such an extent that he got dehumanized in a community. In the future, if anybody does harm to that person, nobody cares. Because he lost his value as a human being. And that's exactly what happened in human history. Winston Churchill, after he starved 3 million Indians to death in India, or was it Bengals? I can't remember. You know what he said? He said, these people are disgusting. They're like animals to me. They dehumanized them, killed 3 million people, and nobody cared. Nobody said anything. It's forgotten in history. Because of what? Them mocking their culture. If you look at the literature, how they mock them, how they ridicule them. They're savages. They're this, they're that. Dehumanize, and then afterwards, whatever crime you want to commit against that person, nobody cares. It's justified in their minds. Look how dangerous it actually is. How dangerous it actually is. And this, it's not related like only to Winston Churchill and the Indians and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in the Holy Quran. He said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. No prophet came to them except for they were ridiculing him. They mocked him. It's a tradition of all the prophets throughout. He says, ما من رسول. Not one single prophet came to a certain people without being ridiculed. But what? Did you see the prophets becoming scared or back up because of that? Did you see them compromise on their values? You know what happened when they compromise on their values? I'm going to mention a narration, inshallah, at the end of the speech. It's a scary narration because that's what happens if we compromise because we're scared of what? People mocking us because of our faith, because of our religion, our values. In another verse from the Holy Quran, زُيِّنَ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا عَلْ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَسْخِرُونَ مَنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. These people, they think that hayat dunya, it has been beautified for these individuals. They think that it's beauty. In other words, they forget about the hereafter. Then what happened afterwards? يَسْخِرُونَ مَنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They make fun and they mock the people that believe. In another verse, حَسَدًا عِنْدَهُمْ. Because they see that the believers, they have something which they don't. Because they're looking for their superior cause in the material things and they know they're not going to find it. So they're jealous of believers, so they start mocking, sarcasm, ridicule, and they're all justified with what? A concept called freedom of expression. So if you say anything against it, you're against democracy, you're against freedom, you're against this and that. While when you see that the philosophers that promoted freedom of expression to begin with in Western history or Western philosophy, they did it so you can criticize the oppressors. But now it's the opposite way around. Now it's the rulers that find a minority, use freedom of expression as a baseball bat to keep hitting them on the head, to ridicule them. This is a political discussion, dear brothers and sisters. It's related to the society as a whole. And this is what we call a project of assimilation. Ridicule a person or a group of people enough so they're so scared to stand firm in their beliefs, they're not going to teach those beliefs to the children and values to the children either. There you have it. His father's name is Ahmed, for example. He is born and raised in a Muslim family, but he knows nothing about Islam, and his children is going to know nothing about his ancestors even. So there you have it. You have a person, his hair, he looks like a person from the Middle East. But when you speak to him, when you talk to him, you find out, no, his values is completely different from what? From a person who's normally or in general from the Middle East. No. Nothing is left. They know that. And that's why they use this method. So now's the question, what can we do to find out whether we are actually submitting to that method or not? What can we do? I'm going to mention a narration and you understand the point. In a narration from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, وَاعْلَمْ بِأَنَّكَ لَا تَكُونَ لَنَا وَلِيًّا حَتَّى لَوْ اجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْكَ أَهْلُ مِصْرِكَ وَقَالُوا إِنَّكَ رَجُلُ السُّوء لَمْ يَحْزُنْكَ ذَلِكَ. You should know that you're not amongst our followers. I'm paraphrasing here. You're not amongst our followers. If your whole city, you live in a city, and your whole city turned against you and tells you that you're a bad person and it doesn't affect you. In other words, what is it that he's saying? A true Shia, even though that your whole city is turning against you, you're not affected by it. Even if they tells you that you're a bad person, you're not affected by it. Why? Because you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As long as you know I did my responsibility in accordance to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted from me, I don't care even if the whole world goes against me. And the narration continues. He said, and if your whole city turns towards you and they tell you, they praises you, it doesn't affect you, it doesn't get to your head. If you're a person that are not controlled by external factors, then you are a true Shia. In other words, you're not scared if people want to ridicule you. You're not scared if people want to mock you. It doesn't matter. In a beautiful interview with a famous scholar, once he arrived to a certain country and people were shouting, it was like, we want to be sacrificed for you, we want to be sacrificed for you, and so on and so forth. A famous journalist, he went up to this person and he asked him, how do you feel when millions of people, they shout like that they want to be sacrificed for the sake of you? He said, Wallahi, even if they shouted death and they used my name, death to this person, like death to me, it will be the same. Subhanallah. Millions of people are praising him and telling him that we are willing to sacrifice our lives for you. He said, there's no difference between that and if they gathered all these millions of people and they shouted death to this specific person. It's the same. He said, I don't care. This is Tawheed. Mention one prophet which didn't have a whole group of people going against him. The majority of prophets, all the people, they went against him. Imagine if they compromised and backed down because of that. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he turned against Nimrud. The whole city went against him. Kana ummatan wahida. He was alone. Imagine if he was like, okay, now people are going against me. I'm a bit scared to be ridiculed. I'm just going to pack my bags and leave. Forget about Nimrud. Fi amanillah. He didn't do that. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, he was told in the desert to build this ark. What happened? In the desert. People said, this person is what? Na'udhu billah. He's a majnoon. Only young people that are naive are listening to him. That's what they said. Even his wife and his children went against him. His sons went against him. Was he scared? Did he continue or not? He did continue. Compromising on your faith and your principles and values, dear brothers and sisters, will have some unwanted consequences if you do it out of your mental fear for being ridiculed. Psychologists, you know what they call it? They call it bloodless murder. Bloodless murder. Why? Because your character is being murdered, but it's bloodless. Nobody's stabbing you. Nobody's stabbing you to death. But basically you died in that society. You don't have anything. Nothing's left for you. So even if they do kill you, nobody would care. They will think it's justified. Why? Because your character got completely assassinated. So it's important for us we learn that. If you see a person like Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam, she got this status and she's mentioned so many times in the Holy Quran, it's because of that. Imagine being the most pure person in the whole city and the city turns against you and tells you that you did zina. It's difficult. It's difficult. But that didn't prevent her from doing her responsibility. Subhanallah. She was brave enough. She didn't care. She was brave enough to continue. This is an example. Unfortunately, we have men in our communities that they don't have 1/10 of that bravery which Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam had. 1/10. When they go to work, they take off the aqiq ring, right? May God forbid people find out I'm a mu'min or I'm a Muslim. Then I have to explain everything in life, I have to explain. I don't want to explain. Are you fasting? No. I have this concept called intermittent fasting. It's not because of Ramadan. Yeah? Do you wear a beard? No, it's just because it's fashion. Why don't you shake hands, for example? I don't shake hands because, I have this issue with my hand. I can't, I have OCD. They bring up all sorts of excuses. Be firm in your principles, dear brothers and sisters, and certain things will happen. Trust me, people will respect you. I once worked in a refugee camp, and there was this Danish woman. She walked up to me, she was like this. She knew I wouldn't shake her hand. So I just looked at her and put my hand on my chest and I said, hey, this and that. And she was like, how come that I only face two types of people? I see the Muslims that shake my hand, even though I know that Islam doesn't allow it. And then I see other Muslims, they bring up so weird excuses that it's quite clear that they're scared to tell me the truth. Now you tell me, why is it? I explained it to her. She said, wow, it actually makes good sense. Simple. Even if it doesn't make sense for that specific person, so what? So what? Are you supposed to guide whoever you meet on your path? Yahdi man yasha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whoever He wants. Guidance is not in your hands. If you're worried about guiding that person. But unfortunately, we compromise so much on our faith that the people that just want to do their wajibat, forget about creating a movement, starting a movement, arrival of the 12 Imam, this and that. Just the fact that they're doing their wajibat, they're considered to be extremists in our communities. Because of what? Because of them not compromising on their faith, or the people that compromised. And therefore, they're pointing towards those who don't compromise and do that. You're the extremist then. If everybody else is compromising, why aren't you? And it's all based on fear. The fear of being ridiculed, the fear of being mocked. And we have so many narrations that explains that as well. So the first thing we should do, dear brothers and sisters, when somebody praises us, we should make sure it doesn't get to our head. How can we do that? Always remember where that blessing is from. If somebody, for example, praised you because of your beard, for example, your face, I don't know, your looks, you talk good, you do good, I don't know, whatever it might be. Always turn around and tell yourself, I know this blessing is not from me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put this blessing in my pocket. It doesn't belong to me. If I have a blessing in life, it's because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without Him, I will be nothing. If you're able to do that and train yourself into doing that, then you're not going to be addicted to people praising you. In other words, you're not going to build a fear if they turn against you either. So if you're indifferent in people praising you, you're going to be indifferent if they start to slander, ridicule, and mock you. That's where it starts. These two things are connected to each other, dear brothers and sisters. And it is possible. So we can do that. Another place we can fight our fear for being ridiculed, you know what it is? Whoever is active, or at least he's present in social media, that's a very good place to do it as well. Sometimes a place of social media, it's a place of ihtiyat for a lot of us. We take our precautions. Why? Because people from our class are there, people from our work are there. So normally we wouldn't share something, even if we find it very good to share. The content is very good. He explains an Islamic principle in a very nice manner, then we're afraid to share it. Why? Because then I have to explain it at work. Then I have to explain it to my classmate. Then I have to explain it to this and that. And therefore we are afraid to do it. In other words, there's some sort of a fear to be ridiculed or mocked that I'm a religious person. We don't want people to find out. You can kill that fear by pressing on the share button. That's how simple it is. That's how simple it is. You can kill that fear. Do it a couple of times. Suddenly you see your fear is gone. The barrier is here, dear brothers and sisters. A couple of days ago, they took me and they threw me in a pool of ice. One of the brothers, he's not present, but his brother is present. He said, it's all here. And it's true, it is here. The fear, it's here. What's going to happen if you share, for example, good content? What's the worst thing that can happen? They label you, so what? Tell me one prophet that wasn't labeled. You're not the most pure person in town. They're not labeling you, accusing you of zina. Are they? No. Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam didn't compromise on her responsibility because of that. Who are we then to be like, no, we're going to compromise then? Who are we then? But Shaykhna, they're going to affect the public opinion. The public opinion going to turn towards us. In fact, we are compromising so much, we are not using this as an opportunity in our own benefit. You know why? The public opinion, when they stir up the public opinion around something like an issue, and we keep quiet, they use it in their own benefit. But let's say they create attention around a certain mosque in Stockholm, yeah? That's in your benefit. That's an opportunity. They open up a door for you. You just don't have to compromise on your faith. Don't be passive. You can use that as an opportunity to talk to the public and change their mind regardless of what they're creating attention about. You can do that. And the best example, dear brothers and sisters, is the example of the worst human tragedy that happened in human history. And that's the tragedy of Karbala. If Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha can use a tragedy that was so bad and she lost her family members in front of her own eyes, if she can use that as an opportunity to talk against the oppressor of her time and change the public opinion about what happened and their oppression against Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, a couple of articles by, I don't know, some journalist in our community or society, trust me, you can use that as an opportunity as well. But it's conditioned by you don't keep quiet. Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha, she used the tragedy of Karbala. She saw an opportunity. That's why she became the flag bearer of Ashura. If it wasn't for Sayyidah Zainab, we wouldn't even know about what happened in Ashura. She was the one that went into the palace of Yazid and gave this amazing speech, as if Ali ibn Abi Talib was standing there talking to Yazid. She used it as an opportunity, dear brothers and sisters. And we can do that as well. Every time they create attention around certain thing within our community, see it as an opportunity. The only thing you just don't have to do is to be afraid that they're going to ridicule you and mock you. If you get past that mental barrier, trust me, it's going to be in your benefit. And subhanAllah, we've seen that. I gave the example to some of the brothers a couple of days ago, yesterday. In Denmark, we had a commission that were put down to ban the hijab in public schools for girls. But from day one, when they did that, you know what we did? One by one, we organized that we're going to call them out. We're going to debate these individuals on radio programs. We're going to write articles, post on social media. One by one, they left this commission, these individuals. They were scared. Now the idea is completely forgotten. Some of the people that even promoted this commission and said, yeah, they were part of it. They came out, they said, actually, we're against it. We're against that. They're trying to, hey, Ajib, 2 days ago, you were saying that we should ban hijab in public schools. Now you say that, no, that's not the right solution. Because they saw that they were dealing with people that weren't afraid to be ridiculed. That's going to create some fear in these people. As we mentioned yesterday. If you're not scared, if you're scared of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes sure that the creations that want to hurt Islam and Muslims, they're going to be scared of you as well. And that's exactly what we saw. What do we have in Denmark? Let's be honest here. We're nothing like compared to what they have. They have the media, they have politicians, they have the state to benefit from. But still, they back down. Because people were not afraid of being ridiculed and mocked. So what will happen if we have that fear? What will happen? What's the social effect of it? In a narration which is quite scary, the narration I promised you that I would let you know about. The Imam, he says, مَا سَلَّطَ اللَّهُ عَلَى إِبْنِ آدَمْ إِلَّا مَنْ خَافَهُ إِبْنِ آدَمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to make you submit to anyone, the children of Adam. He's not going to make the children of Adam, humankind, whoever it might be, all of us. He's not going to make him submit to anyone except that person which Ibn Adam, which we fear. In other words, look at what you fear and you're going to find out what you're going to submit to. If it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah. If it's the fear of being ridiculed and mocked by certain people, you're going to submit to those people. You're going to submit to those people. And what's the difference? We explained it yesterday. If you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's going to embrace you. He's going to shower you with blessings. But if you're going to fear people that wants to destroy you, your religion, and hate everything about you, what's going to happen then? They're going to ruin you. They're going to ruin you, all the next generations that you can think of. They're going to completely destroy you. You will have no identity left yourself, let alone your children. And that's going to be the consequences of what? Of submitting to your fear. If the fear is for being ridiculed by these individuals or by these people that we see in our community, whether it's journalists, I don't know, people that debate or vocal in the public debate, whoever it might be. If you want to see where you're submitted to or what you're going to submit to, look at what you fear. If it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to submit to Allah. If not, and it's humans, you're going to submit to that person, whoever it might be. A politician, journalist, no matter what. And that's the main difference between Ashura and Fatimiyya, dear brothers and sisters. That's the main difference between Ashura. In Ashura, was the fear real or not? It was. You had an army of, according to some narrations, 30,000 men standing there with swords. Yeah? They were ready to kill. So when Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, he says, is there anyone there to help me? If you said yes, then you know for sure that you're going to be beheaded. But when it comes to Fatimiyya, dear brothers and sisters, that was not the case. The fear was here. It was mental. There wasn't an army waiting for people to what? To behead the people that helped Fatima al-Zahra salamun alayha. The only thing that prevented the people of Medina to help Fatima al-Zahra was a mental fear. The fear of being ridiculed, the fear of being mocked. That's why you see nobody did nothing. The same people that were willing to go on the battlefield and were standing on the front next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, next to Rasulullah, suddenly they were quiet because of a mental fear. Look how dangerous it is. 2 years ago, you were willing to sacrifice your life. 2 years later, you're not willing even to say stop when you see the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam falling to the ground. To that extent, a mental fear can take you to that extent that you are willing to sacrifice your life. And now you can't even say something. You can't even push the person. You don't even dare to say anything. You're just standing there as a bystander and looking and watching the thing happen. That's why we have to be careful, dear brothers and sisters. The mental fear sometimes can lead you to submit to people that's going to make you the worst oppressor. Forget about being submitted to an oppressor. You're going to be an oppressor. Why? Because I'm pretty sure that the people that were standing there watching and didn't do nothing, they're going to be considered to be amongst the oppressors as well on the day of judgment. They're going to be considered to be what? Amongst the people of... So in a narration, we have that the servant of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima al-Zahra, salamun alayha, she once ran to the masjid where Ali ibn Abi Talib, Fatima al-Zahra was passing away. It was her last minutes. So as she ran into the masjid, and she said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, if you want to see Fatima alive for the last moment and for the last time, hurry up. Fatima is passing away. When Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he heard that, according to the narration, he took off his amama and he threw it to the ground. He ran towards the home, didn't care about no one. So he was sitting with Fatima. Fatima didn't answer him anymore. And Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he put Fatima's head on his lap and he kept looking at her while he was crying. He said, Fatima, please answer me. He heard no answer. He kept saying, Fatima, please talk to me. Speak to me, Fatima. Nobody answered. Then a moment came and Ali ibn Abi Talib, he looked at Fatima. He said, Ya Fatima, Ana Ali ibn Abi Talib. Please talk to me. When she heard that, suddenly she opened up her eyes. She looked at Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and she started shedding tears because she saw Ali ibn Abi Talib was shedding tears. And they cried together. It is narrated after Ali ibn Abi Talib, he buried his wife Fatima al-Zahra salamun alayha. Have you ever experienced that when you bury a person, it's only after you put him into the ground that you find out what you lost. And suddenly the sorrow just attacks your heart like a storm. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he was standing next to the grave. So when he put the last dirt on the ground and he buried Fatima and he finished, according to the narration, it says that sorrow attacked his heart and he fell to the ground and he started crying. This is the warrior of Badr, the warrior of Khandaq, the warrior of Khaybar, falling to the ground shedding tears for his wife Fatima. Ala la'natullah ala qawmi al-zalimin. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin.